This gameplay video is brought to you by very generous patron Shuffles. Etali Primal Conqueror versus Rayhan and Ravos, Tashar and Atraxa. I would not keep that if it wasn't for the Sylvan Library in hand, but there it is, so we'll hope that that can draw us into some ramp here. Birds of Paradise on turn 1 from the partner player. Nature's Law now from Rayhan and Ravos. And going down to 4 cards in hand, and Ozolith. Okay, we drew into a Decimate and then another 4-mana spell in Skyshroud Claim. So definitely keeping our fingers crossed with this Sylvan Library. Atraxa playing Experimental Augury, nothing to proliferate thankfully. Tashar casting a Steel Shaper's Gift without dropping a land yet. Went after a Paradise Mantle with that. So not dropping a land, not getting down a creature for the Paradise Mantle either. We see an Arcane Signet over here, followed by a Branching Evolution, so yeah, plenty of plus counter shenanigans going on over here. So we survive with the Sylvan Library. Alright, managed to get into a land and a Fires of Yavimaya. I think we're fine to shuffle that one away, but we'll keep the ramp and the land. Bloated Contaminator from Atraxa. Alright, Tashar gets another Plains, that's good. Playing an Arcbound Ravager. Now seeing a Quirion Beastcaller for the partner player. Whenever you cast a creature spell, it gets a plus counter, and when it dies, you distribute the plus counters amongst the creatures you control. So our opponent's starting to get the game plan going here. Rayhan, last of the Abzan. And we still have this Sylvan Library, so likely going to be able to continue to ramp. Skyshroud Claim into Farseek is excellent, and Zendikar Resurgent might be next turn's play. Let's keep all these. Yeah, unfortunately, if we'd got into a land there, we could have gone Mana Crypt into the Zendikar Resurgent, but yeah, can't do it here, so we'll just ramp ahead as far as we can. So we'll just get 2 tap lands in here. Argument to be made for Rhythm of the Wild, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose we could go for Rhythm of the Wild to give our commander haste next turn. Yeah, we'll do that. Vraska's Fall from our opponents, so going to see the back of an Arcbound Ravager, which is probably a good thing. And the Abzan player has to sack a creature as well. Noteworthy that each opponent gets a poison counter with this as well, ready to start proliferating. So, alright, surprisingly, Quirion Beastcaller being sacrificed, so plus counter going onto the Rayhan here, which did enter the battlefield as a 6/6 thanks to the Branching Evolution. So 2 plus counters being put on the Ozolith. Oh, and counters were put onto the Birds of Paradise. And Rayhan got some here as well. So Rayhan a 10/10, a 4/5 Birds of Paradise. And we see a Glistener Elf from the Atraxa player, who has now tapped out. And the Bloated Contaminator swings in at us, so we'll have 2 poison here. And then going to proliferate, because they've dealt damage to us. So we go to 3 poison, and it's 2 poison for our other 2 players here. Mono white player not doing too well here, unfortunately. Luckily has a Mem Knight to put the equipment onto. Still only puts him on 2 mana though, with 5 cards in hand. And there is a Skull Clamp as well. Can't tap this down for mana because it does have Summoning Sickness. So I imagine we're eating a nice chunk of damage from the Rayhan next turn. Might have to forego our commander and go for a Decimate. See a Gala Greeters from our opponent. And then followed by another creature. Wow, our opponent has absolutely everything here. Conclave Mentor. So even more plus counters, assuming that the Gala Greeters does that. Alright, so 3 plus counters being put on the Gala Greeters. Put those on with its own ability. And then a Viscerous Seer after that. So our opponent does have a sack outlet for the Ozolith, which yeah, we're going to want to be blowing up soon, I think. A tapped treasure token from the Gala Greeters. And the Ozolith does have 2 plus counters on it, so that can go on to the commander here. It will put more plus counters on it than that, thanks to the counter doubling. Not putting it on the commander though, it instead goes on to the Conclave Mentor, so everything's going to have a plus counter apart from the sack outlet. Okay, that's good news. The 10/10 swinging in towards the Atraxa player. So that's one more hit that our opponent's going to have to take on us. Our opponent doesn't really care about the Infecting Blocker because it will just take away a plus counter effectively. And they do decide to block here. So Rayhan going down to a 9/9. Okay, we lose the flip, so we're already down to 20. Okay, there's a Blade of Selves, that'll be really good with our commander. Our commander costs 7, I think. Yep. So we're not going to be able to play our commander and hold up the Chaos Warp or the Beast Within, unfortunately. We're not going to shuffle, so why don't we go Blade of Selves on top and Beast Within on top. I think I might Decimate this turn. So that means we can Command Tower, and then we go for the Decimate. So the artifact can be the Ozolith. The creature, I mean, it's hard to say what creature, but we've got a Chaos Warp we're going to be holding up here anyway, so we'll go for the commander, the Branching Evolution, and we'll go for their Triome here as well. So it's 4 permanents all on one player's side of the field. They've only got 1 card in hand, but we do need to slow them down. And they do still have a token doubling effect in the Conclave Mentor, unfortunately. Alright, so in response, our opponent is sacrificing the commander with the Viscerous Seer, which is going to put Rayhan triggers on the stack. So yeah, I think in response to that, that actually works out really well. Now we can go for the Chaos Warp. Or do we even need to do that now? Someone else might point removal at it. Yeah, this is going to get a bunch of plus counters on it, but it doesn't necessarily matter, because we should be able to do it during their turn. They won't have too many cards in hand. So the other 3 permanents are blown up. Our opponent's left with a 28/28 and a couple of 4 power creatures as well. Didn't intend on shuffling those cards away, but I think we're going to need all the mana we can lay our hands on this game, so I will go for the Farseek, in for the Shockland tapped, so that we don't have to take 2 life to it later, and we're just holding up Chaos Warp during this turn cycle, and hoping that we don't need to use it on the Conclave Mentor, but I don't think anyone else is going to be using their spot removal on it. I imagine this thing comes hurtling in straight towards us, and no one's going to save an Etali player. Just a Chromatic Lantern for a Traxxas. And then we see an Unnatural Restoration just going into their hand, the Glistener Elf, but we will see them proliferate again, so putting us on 4 poison. Yeah, and then holding back the Toxic creature because they're scared that they'll get whacked by this thing again. Like I said, I imagine it comes straight in at us, especially with us being wide open. Just a Commander Sphere for the white player, still struggling on mana over there. Deciding to clamp the Memnite though and try and make a land drop. Not seeing a land, but we do see Tormod's Crypt there. So I'm glad our opponent's played that before we see it with Etali. Sacrificing that straight away to go after the Abzan player's graveyard, so all of that exiled straight away. Sacking the Commander Sphere to draw a card as well. And now it is risky allowing the Abzan player to untap, because it might be that there's a Heroic Intervention in hand or something like that, but I think it's worth the risk here. They are likely to swing in at us, but we'll use the Chaos Warp on their turn just in case they swing somewhere else. Also, if we get a creature off the Chaos Warp, then it will have Summoning Sickness most likely. Okay, that is a Blood Tracker. No way of redistributing the plus counters at the moment, thankfully. Making a treasure token with the Gala Greeters now that they are struggling on mana a little bit. And we get to see who they swing in at. No prizes for guessing who it's going to be. And yep, that is the correct decision. So we go for the Chaos Warp onto it and pray that 1, we don't get into anything really good for our opponent, but also that it actually lands. Our opponent paying 2 life and a black mana to put a couple of plus counters on the Blood Tracker before that thing goes. Alright, and that lands. Does get our opponent into a frightening creature though. That is a Champion of Lamholt. Plus counter on the Gala Greeters. But we do survive another turn here. Alright, so if we can keep winning the Mana Crypt flip, which we don't there, I think that's 2 in a row. That will obviously be better for us, but we do lose that flip. Means we can take less to the Sylvan Library. Okay, a Cogler on top, fighting the Champion of Lamholt. This, having flying, isn't good either. Put Pathbreaker on top, and then the Cogler on top, ready for the Etali. Then that means we can play a land this turn. We can go Zendikar Resurgent into our commander, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we'll have 1 mana floating after that, so go for the mana doubler. Oh, and of course we'll draw a card to the Zendikar Resurgent, won't we? Didn't account for that. Which means we're going to get into the Pathbreaker Ibex instead of the Cogler. Yeah, that could be a problem for us. But we could get something else good off the Etali. We've got 3 other opponents that we can try and get something good with, so it's worth getting down the Zendikar Resurgent. Should have accounted for the cantrip though. So Zendikar Resurgent triggers. After casting the Etali, we know what we're drawing into. And do we care about haste? I don't think we care about a plus counter, so I'll put haste on it just in case. Then Etali does trigger, of course. So we see the Pathbreaker, which we know about. There is a Bloom Tender, which can have haste. Hand of Praetors. Might as well just get a blocker into play. And there is a Dispatch, which we can only tap a target creature with, unfortunately. We can just tap down a big creature, just in case any of our other players here manage to get through the big stuff. Did cast some creature spells though into the Zendikar Resurgent. It does count as casting, so we will draw some cards to the Zendikar Resurgent. Already made a land for the turn. A Strionic Resonator would be good with an Etali trigger on the stack. Goblin and Archamancer is just more ramp, so I don't care about that particularly. We'll put a plus counter on our Infect creature. The Bloom Tender can have haste. We do control a black permanent, so we'll get 3 mana from that. Not sure if we're actually going to use it or not though. Plus counter on the Ibex as well. So that leaves us with double red and 4 mana in total for the Bloom Tender. Yeah, so I think it can just be Goblin and Archamancer and the Strionic Resonator. Draw another card with the Zendikar Resurgent, and that is a Beast Whisperer. So that's effectively another means of cantripping with creatures. Plus counter on the Goblin and Archamancer and Strionic Resonator. Just challenging our opponents to deal with us at this point. There are a couple of big flyers in the air, so it could be done. Obviously the Champion of Lambholt is frightening as well. Just going to hold back our big creatures and hope we survive another turn cycle. It is interesting that we could get someone with Infect, especially once we drop the Unnatural Growth. Our opponents are going to have to be careful with that in play. The Bloated Contaminator does swing in this time, so we might be seeing a board wipe here. Goes against the mono white player. So this will proliferate. And that was a Phyresis Outbreak. Each opponent gets a poison counter, then -1/-1 on the creatures for each poison counter they have. Blood Tracker going to refill Rayhan's hand. I actually only draw 2 cards there. Only had 2 plus counters on it. But we're up to 6 poison. And there's the Glistener Elf again that they returned to hand previously. Our opponent hasn't managed to get rid of the Etali, which he might be glad of. So I wonder if we have to go for the Primal Sickness next turn and swing in over here. Doesn't look like our opponent's having any more luck with the mana. Hangabat Walker coming down for just 1. But will be clampable, and they do go for the Skull Clamp. We cleared a card off the top for them, of course. So drawing 2 with the Hangabat Walker and making a Thopter off that. And still not getting into a land, amazingly, so Tashar being particularly unlucky here. The partner player had a really good start, but has also struggled on mana. So I'm hoping that we've managed to stabilise here. A Good Fortune Unicorn for our opponent. Plus counter on all the creatures that enter from now on. Over on this side of the field anyway. And then another sack outlet, Altar of Dementia. So we're looking pretty good here. I'll probably take out a Traxxer, I think. We lose again to the Mana Crypt, so we go down to 14. That's a Conjurer's Closet, which we could use this turn. Need to be careful how we stack the top of our library here. Panharmonicon, really good as well. Yeah, I'm just going to assume that we're going to draw into this stuff because I can't calculate what we're going to draw into and what we're not. So Conjurer's Closet and the Panharmonicon on top. And then we definitely want to transform the Etali. I haven't done this on the channel before. So we will pay the Phyrexian Life because our life total's teetering as it is. So that transforms into an 11/11 Indestructible with Trample. And we do have a mana floating, but there's nothing in particular we're going to do with it. We could go for the Unnatural Growth. Don't think it really matters though, I'd rather just keep hold of the mana. So we swing into the left against a Traxxer, who ironically is going to go down with poison counters here. Blocking with the Infector, so our Etali will go down to a 10/10, but that is enough to get our opponent here. Trigger goes on the stack, the Glistener Elf goes down, minus counter on our commander. And a Traxxer is knocked out of the game, so I don't think we need to worry about Proliferate anymore. Maybe there'll be some in the Abzan deck, but I wouldn't have thought there'd be too much of it. So now we can play the Beast Whisperer. That will draw us a card. And it's the Panharmonicon that we see hit play. Plus counter on the Beast Whisperer. I think we just have to go for Cogler here so that we can get the Good Fortune Unicorn out of the way. I don't think the Thopter token is going to do much to us. And this can draw us into the Closet, ready for next turn, assuming that we even need a next turn. Draw to the Beast Whisperer as well. And that is the Great Henge to start gaining us a bit of life, that's good. Plus counter on the Cogler thanks to the Rhythm of the Wild, and we'll fight the Good Fortune Unicorn out of the way. So our opponent sacks it in response, going to mill us for 2 with Altar of Dementia, not particularly worried about that. We see the back of an Ancient Tomb, which is good. And Tireless Tracker wasn't particularly bothered about that either. So then we'll get down a land for the turn, and we can actually get down the Great Henge here, can't we? So might as well do that. Oh, actually, don't think we have another dual land in the deck. No, we don't, so just double red for us, which we can't do anything with, apart from activate the Strident Resonator, which I doubt is going to be relevant. If we lose by 1 life, then that was a mistake. Could obviously have played and cracked the fetch way before then, so that would have been the thing to do there, so that we could have played the Henge. Chromatic Sphere now for the mono white player. Gets another chance to draw into a land here. And sacrificing the Chromatic Sphere, drawing a card, he did get into another Plains, turn 7 and only 4 lands is pretty rough. Might be able to wipe the board here though. No, that is a Recruiter of the Guard, so tutoring for a small creature. And our opponent gets a mere Moon Vessel. Doesn't have the mana to cast it, unfortunately. Noteworthy that he could have equipped the Paradise Mantle onto the Thopter and tapped that for mana into the Recruiter, and it would have effectively cheated the cost on this next turn, but maybe our opponent doesn't want the Thopter to be tapped. We do have big stompy creatures in place, so I don't think the Thopter being tapped is going to be relevant. But it's all on the Abzan player here. Ochra Jelly, that is X is 4, it's just a 4-4 with Trample, so yeah, don't think our opponent on the Abzan side of the table has anything either. Our opponents just eagerly await which one of them we are about to take out here. So see if we lose the Mana Crypt flip again. We do. We've lost nearly all of those this game. See a Woodland Bellower. And off the Sylvan Library is an E-Witness and a Farhaven Elf. Doesn't matter, we're going to draw into these things anyway. So first things first, we get down the Great Henge because it's free. Play it for 2 green mana, and it taps for 2 green mana. Throw out the Panharmonicon. And then let's take a player out here, because if they somehow manage to do something to us, then that will dictate what we do with the rest of our turn. So Etali can go after the Abzan player. Cogler can swing it to the left. We'll hold back a blocker just in case. Cogler can get rid of the Skull Clamp, I think, is a sensible thing to get rid of. Recruiter of the Guard chump blocks the Cogler, and the Use jumps in the way of the big Etali. But we still get 6 points of infect damage through to our opponent. The Ochra Jelly going to trigger, creating a token, which doesn't do anything here. And down that player goes, so it's going to take some luck on the mono white player side of the field, and they're running low on luck apparently. Let's play ourselves a Conjurer's Closet, just to have some fun with the commander. Then play the Woodland Bellower. We draw into the 2 cards that are on top, which ironically are 2 3 mana creatures. Plus counter on the Woodland Bellower. We'll draw the cards after we tutor twice with the Woodland Bellower. Not sure if we've got enough creatures left in the deck for grabbing anything with this. Obviously could copy with the Strident Resonator as well. Okay, there's a Topiary Stomper, a Rex Sage. I think I'll go for Topiary Stomper and the Rex Sage. So when the Topiary Stomper comes in, we search for a creature. Maybe should have got down the Rex Sage first, but I don't think it matters. The land comes in tapped off the Stomper. I just wanted this one in because it's a bigger creature. I'm just playing it really, really safe here. Obviously could have had more mana from the Wood Elves because it brings the land in untapped. Great Henge giving us a land and another land. And then we get the second trigger resolving on the Woodland Bellower. So that can be the Rex Sage, which will blow up the 2 artifacts on our opponent's side of the field with a plus counter on it. And I do appreciate my opponents playing this out. I was amazed to not see any early scoops here, because it did warrant the early scoops, but they decided to play it out, and I'm grateful for it. Great Henge gets us a Twin Flame, so let's drop a land. I'm hoping that my opponent isn't thinking ill of me for doing this, but just for the sake of the video, let's go for a copy of the Etali. Oh, actually, it'll come down as a copy of the Infect version, won't it? Yeah, alright, so keep the original. That doesn't work. Yeah, we'll just pass at that. So, Conjurer's Closet going to flicker our commander, and it will come back in as the original version. It'll take the minus counter off it as well. Bring it in with a plus counter on it. Great Henge puts a couple of plus counters on it thanks to it triggering twice with the Panharmonicon. The Etali triggers twice as well, and we'll trigger it for a third time with the Strionic Resonator. Obviously only 2 players in the game here, so won't necessarily get anything good. But there's a Rishkar's Expertise, an Ornithopter. We went past 2 planes of our opponents as well. That's pretty typical. We draw from the creatures. I decided not to go for the Rishkar's Expertise because I don't want to dunk on my opponent too much here. Drawing into a whole heap of stuff. Still haven't got to do the Ortheon thing. Might just build a deck of Ortheon instead. Cultivate, there is a Krark Clan Ironworks as well. Just play that because it's easy and shouldn't put anything else on the stack. And then the third trigger is a Crucible of Worlds, nice easy one. And there's an Elder Gargaroth. Just in case my opponent does something, we can gain life with that, so I think it's sensible to get it into play. And there we end the turn with a whole heap of mana in our hand. So we'll get rid of that. Now what would be funny is if the mono white player managed to get down a board wipe here. There is one, he'd be able to cast for 3 mana. That would wipe out all the non-lands in play. A Mox Opal with no rocks in play, won't do anything. Followed by a Claws of Gix, so if it's some kind of Cheerios deck, you might be able to get the Metalcraft over on the Mox Opal. Mere Moon Vessel. Obviously saw our opponent tutor for that one. Then using the Claw of Gix to sacrifice the Mere Moon Vessel, that will make a land and gain a life to the Gix. And now it's an Aviary Mechanic. Return a permanent to its owner's hand. Maybe our opponent will be able to combo off here. I'm not sure about all of Tashar's combos. So deciding on the Mox Opal, which doesn't tap for mana, but deciding to replay it anyway. And it's a Stonecoil Serpent where X is 1, so that will give them Metalcraft again, meaning they've got 2 mana available. And there's a Core Skyfisher. So you can see the type of thing Tashar wants to do. Just not sure if he's been quite fast enough here. Replaying the Mox Opal again. So looks like he's passing the turn over to us. It's noteworthy that having the Krark Clan Ironworks means that we can sacrifice the Mana Crypt as well if we needed to, which is another reason it was worth playing. So our opponent only has 6 toughness available, which means the poison damage from the Etali should be enough. We finally win a flip with the Mana Crypt. Draw a land and a Garruk's Uprising, so put those on top. Drop the Reliquary Tower and the Sol Ring into the Garruk's Uprising. This will draw us a card and it will give all of our stuff trample as well. Our opponent seems willing to play it out, so I don't mind durdling a little bit with my opponent's time here. So we'll go Unnatural Growth. This will double our creature's power and toughness at the beginning of combat. And then let's transform the Etali again. We only have 35 cards in the deck, so can't durdle forever. Our Etali is a 14/14 with Trample and Indestructible. So let's go through to combat here. Really appreciate my opponent playing it out, being a really good sport here. The Unnatural Growth doubles up all of our creatures, and we will attack in with everything. Everything has Trample thanks to the other enchantment. Kogler can take out the Stonecoil Serpent, which does not have protection from mono-coloured, and we'll gain 3 life from the Elder Gargaroth. Yeah, all credit to my opponent here. He's been a really good sport and turns out to be a friend of the channel as well. All 3 of the opponents were really good sports actually, so massive thank you to them for not whining and complaining and for giving us a full game as well. So there we go. Seemed like it was an Infect game, that one, and don't think I've transformed Etali Primal Sickness before, especially not on the channel, so it was good to see that side of it, and turned out it was pretty relevant this game. Didn't see too much of the flicker shenanigans until later on in the game. Anyway, massive thank you to my opponents again. Huge thank you to the patrons as well who support the channel so vigorously. And I will see you all in the next one, I hope. I'm Tribalkai. Thank you for watching.